On Friday, March 21st, 2025, I carried my sister's coffee-soaked laptop into a repair shop across town and walked out knowing I could not go home. The technician had found photographs of my front door, my bedroom, and the inside of my closet, all stored beneath a folder labeled with that night's date. Before I take you back into that shop, I hope you're doing well today. Stay with me, and please subscribe to the channel, because the files on Marissa's laptop were only the beginning of what my family had prepared for me. My sister called at 5:32 that evening, just as I was closing my office at Blake Family Pain and Wellness. "Natalie, I need a favor," Marissa said, which was how most of our conversations began when she had damaged something, missed something, or promised something she expected me to deliver. A thin hiss came through the phone, followed by the clatter of keys. "What happened?" I asked. "I spilled coffee on my laptop. It shut down, and my presentation for tomorrow is on there." The clinic hallway outside my office smelled of disinfectant and the cinnamon coffee one of the nurses brewed every afternoon. Most of the lights had already switched to their dim evening setting, and the heating vents clicked above the ceiling tiles as I locked the filing cabinet behind me. "Use the backup," I said. "There isn't one. Your slides should be on the shared drive." "They should be, but they're not." Marissa lowered her voice. "Please don't start." That meant she knew I was right and wanted the conversation to move on before I said so. I rested my briefcase on the desk. There are 3 repair stores within 10 minutes of the clinic. Northgate does data recovery. The others replace screens and sell chargers. Her answer came too quickly, as though she had prepared it. "They close at 7. I already called. They'll wait if you bring it now." Northgate Data Recovery sat on the far side of the city, almost 40 minutes from my house without Friday traffic. I glanced at the clock, then at the folder on my desk containing the preliminary figures for Monday's independent compliance review. For 6 weeks, I had been tracing small errors that refused to stay small. Medication disposal forms with missing witness initials. Procedure notes entered after midnight. Patient accounts that appeared in billing records but not on the appointment calendar. Each problem had arrived with a reasonable explanation, yet the explanations had begun to overlap in ways numbers rarely did by accident. Marissa knew I had scheduled an outside review. She did not know its full scope. "Where are you?" I asked. "At the East Clinic. My car's being serviced, and I have a donor dinner in 20 minutes. I can send Tyler down with the laptop." "Tyler left an hour ago." Silence held for half a second. "Then I'm stuck," Marissa said. "Natalie, this presentation is for the foundation. Dad will lose his mind if I show up tomorrow without it." Our father's disappointment had been Marissa's favorite emergency since childhood. Somehow, it always became my assignment. "I'll take it," I said. "Leave it with reception." Her breath loosened. "You're the best. Text me when you get there." "I'll text when I have information." "No, just let me know you made it. They're expecting you." The burned coffee smell hit me before I opened the padded case. It had seeped into the fabric and mixed with the sharp odor of overheated plastic. When I pressed the power button, the fan gave a broken whine, spun twice, and stopped. I put the laptop back into its case without trying again. At 6:11, Marissa texted, "Are you on the way?" At 6:19, she sent another message asking whether traffic was bad. At 6:34, as I turned into Northgate's parking lot, my phone lit up again. "Did you get there yet?" I typed, "Walking in now." Her reply came before I reached the door, and it consisted of 2 words. "Thank God." Northgate occupied the end unit of a tired strip mall between a tax office and a closed pet grooming salon. Wet snow had started tapping against the windshield, too soft to settle but cold enough to sting my face when I crossed the lot. Inside, white lights reflected off stainless steel work tables. The room smelled faintly of solder, dust, and stale coffee. A row of computer fans hummed behind the counter, each one producing a slightly different pitch. A man in a gray Northgate polo looked up from a magnifying lamp. "Natalie Blake?" he asked. "Yes, I'm Natalie." "I'm Evan Cole. Your sister called twice." "That sounds like her." He gave a polite smile, then pulled the service form toward him. "She authorized us to recover a presentation file and related documents from the user folder. Nothing beyond that unless we contact her again." I read the form before signing as the person dropping off the device. Marissa's electronic authorization sat at the bottom, time-stamped less than an hour earlier. What happens if the drive is damaged? I asked. We image it first if we can. We don't work directly on the original unless there's no other option. And if deleted material appears during the search? The software may show previews, but we stay within the terms of the request. His answer was clear, practiced, and exactly what I wanted to hear. Evan removed the laptop from its case. Coffee with sugar? Knowing Marissa, vanilla creamer. That makes the damage worse, Evan said. For the next 20 minutes, he worked in silence, except for brief explanations. The machine would not boot normally, but the internal drive responded through his equipment. A progress bar moved across one monitor, while a file index filled another. I stood on the customer side of the counter, answering emails from my phone and trying not to stare at the screen. Monday's review remained at the front of my mind. I had spent too many years cleaning up small administrative problems to panic over every irregularity, but lately I had begun waking before dawn with dates and patient numbers arranged behind my eyes. Evan searched for the title Marissa had provided. Several partial files appeared, along with temporary images generated by presentation software. Then his hand stopped on the mouse. The fan noise behind the counter seemed louder. "Is this your address?" he asked, then read the street number aloud. My fingers tightened around my phone. "Yes, that is my house." Evan turned the monitor toward me. The first image showed my front door beneath the brass porch light. It had been taken from close enough to capture the scrape near the deadbolt, the one I had made while carrying in a bookcase the previous fall. The next showed my upstairs hallway, then my bedroom, then the inside of my closet. For a moment, the room narrowed to the soft electrical hum and the hard edge of the counter beneath my palm. My body reacted before my mind caught up. My shoulders locked. My mouth went dry. Then the part of me trained to examine bad records took over. "Don't open anything else," I said. Evan leaned back from the keyboard. "I won't open another file." "Did you create those images?" "No. The software generated the previews from deleted data. I haven't saved or exported them." "Can you show me the file path and timestamps without changing the source?" "Yes, I can show you that safely." A folder sat above the images. Its name was March 21st, the date of that night. Evan opened only the file listing, not the documents themselves. The names were short and bland enough to mean nothing to a stranger. Entry 640, top shelf, and call after 11. One preview showed a medication label. I recognized the color band used on drugs stocked in our outpatient procedure rooms. Another showed a simple drawing of my closet, with an arrow pointing behind the stack of winter shoeboxes on the upper shelf. My phone buzzed against the counter. Marissa had sent another message asking whether I had made it. I did not answer. "How long ago were these files deleted?" I asked. "I can give you an estimate, not a courtroom conclusion," Evan said. "Some were created earlier this week. Several were modified today." "Can you see the last modification time on the folder?" He checked. 4:48 this afternoon. Less than an hour before Marissa called me. Evan clicked once on the metadata panel, and a text string appeared beside one of the scheduling files. Entry window, 6:40 to 7:20. Northgate was 38 minutes from my house in clear traffic. With the wet snow and rush hour congestion, I had been gone for nearly an hour. A small pressure formed beneath my ribs, not panic exactly, but the sensation of a locked door giving way one screw at a time. "I need you to stop the recovery," I said. "Do not copy those files for me. Do not send them to my sister. Preserve whatever you've already done and write down each step." Evan nodded. "You should call the police." "First, I'm calling my attorney." Leah Sloan answered on the second ring. I had hired her 2 weeks earlier to advise me on the independent review, a decision I had not shared with my family. "Natalie," Leah said, "what happened?" I told her only what I could verify. The damaged laptop, the authorized recovery, the photographs, the current date, the entry window, the medication label. She did not interrupt. "Is the laptop still with the technician?" Leah asked when I finished. "Yes, it is still on his workbench." "Has he copied anything for you?" "No, and I told him not to copy anything." "That is good." Ask him to stop all work and document what he saw. Do not take the laptop. Do not call your sister. Call the police and report a possible planned entry into your home. I'm not going home alone. I know, Leah said. I'm saying it because someone in your family is counting on you behaving like this is a family disagreement. That sentence settled something inside me. Evan locked the workstation and began writing a service note. I called the non-emergency police line. Then the dispatcher transferred me after I described the time-sensitive files and the photographs from inside my home. While we waited, I texted my neighbor across the street. Police may come by. Please stay inside and don't approach my house. Next, I opened my phone settings and disabled location sharing with my parents and Marissa. We had turned it on years earlier during a winter storm and never turned it off. At 7:12, my mother called. I looked at Evan. If I put this on speaker, can you write down what you hear? Yes, I'll write down the conversation, I answered. Hi, Mom. Natalie, where are you? Judith asked. Her voice carried the calm concern she used when she wanted a witness to remember her as reasonable. Why are you asking? I'm standing outside your house. I brought soup, but you're not answering the door. I watched the wet snow slide down Northgate's front window. You drove over without calling? I did call. You didn't answer. My recent calls showed nothing from her. What kind of soup? I asked. A pause followed. Chicken noodle. Does that matter? Behind her voice, I heard almost nothing. No traffic from the avenue, 2 blocks from my house, no wind against the porch microphone. Most of all, no metal chime knocking beneath the eave, though even a light breeze made it tap against the brick. Are you on the porch? I asked. Yes, Natalie, I am on the porch. Where else would I be? A uniformed officer entered Northgate as she spoke. Evan raised one hand to get his attention, then pointed toward my phone. I'm on my way home, I told my mother. You sound strange. I've had a long day. Well, hurry, your soup is getting cold. She did not sound like a woman waiting outside in wet snow. Her breathing was even, and there was no impatience in it. My mother hated being cold. She complained when grocery stores kept their freezers too low. Evan turned his monitor toward the officer and began explaining what the recovery software had displayed. I kept Judith talking while opening the smart lock application on my phone. My thumb hovered above the controls. I did not lock, unlock, or reset anything. Any change might alert whoever was there, and I wanted the history exactly as it stood. The activity log loaded. At 6:43 that evening, my front door had been opened with a personal code. It was not mine, and it was not Marissa's. The entry read, Judith Blake. My mother was still speaking through the phone. I'm standing right outside, she said. The door is locked. I stared at her name on the screen, time-stamped inside the precise entry window hidden on Marissa's laptop. Judith was not waiting on my porch. My mother had already entered my house. The officer beside me kept his headlights off, while another patrol car rolled slowly past my house. From where we waited, half a block away, the place looked ordinary. The porch light glowed above the front steps. Wet snow gathered along the curb, and the curtains in my bedroom remained closed. Anyone driving past would have seen a quiet brick house on a cold Friday night. I saw an entry log with my mother's name on it. Officer Daniel Ruiz sat behind the wheel, speaking into his radio in a low voice while his partner approached the property with another officer. They did not rush the door or draw their weapons for the benefit of a dramatic story. They checked the yard, the side gate, the detached garage, and the ground floor windows before entering through the front door with my permission. My mother's call had ended 3 minutes earlier. She had hung up after I told her traffic was slow. The lie tasted bitter, but it kept her from knowing exactly what I had found. Do you have any cameras inside? Officer Ruiz asked. One in the front hall and another facing the back door, I said. Neither points into a bedroom or bathroom. Can you view them without changing any settings? I opened the security application and selected the front hall camera. The image loaded at an angle, showing half the staircase and a slice of the entry rug. That's wrong, I said. What is? The camera should face the door. Someone had turned it toward the wall without disconnecting it. The device had continued recording, but the doorway was mostly outside the frame. Officer Ruiz leaned closer without taking the phone from me. Can you preserve the recordings? The service stores them online for 30 days. I can also prevent automatic deletion. Do that, but don't edit or download anything yet. We'll document the account and time. I changed only the retention setting. The last clear recording showed my empty hall at 6:39. 4 minutes later, the picture jerked, blurred beneath a hand, and settled at the wrong angle. A sleeve passed across the corner of the frame. Dark wool. A row of small pearl buttons. My mother owned a coat like that. She had worn it to church through 3 winters because she said good tailoring never went out of style. The radio on Officer Ruiz's shoulder crackled. "House is clear," his partner said. "No one located inside." The muscles between my shoulders loosened, though the pressure beneath my ribs remained. "Did they find anything?" I asked. Officer Ruiz did not answer until the voice on the radio returned. "Upstairs, closet door is open. There's an unfamiliar gym bag partially concealed behind storage boxes. We have not touched it." I closed my eyes for one breath, then opened them. That bag is not mine. By the time I entered the house, the snow on my coat had melted into cold spots along my shoulders. Officer Ruiz walked beside me, while another officer recorded our path from the doorway. Nothing had been overturned. No drawers had been dumped across the floor, and no furniture had been moved. The quiet order of the place made the intrusion worse. Whoever had entered knew exactly where to go. A faint trace of my mother's perfume hung near the staircase. White flowers and sandalwood. Judith Blake had worn the same scent since I was in high school, and it followed her through rooms long after she left them. At the top of the stairs, one of my winter boots sat on its side. The pair belonged on the upper closet shelf, behind 3 labeled shoe boxes. I had put them there in January, after deciding the soles were too worn for another season. One boot now rested near the bedroom door, as though it had slipped from someone's hand. My closet stood open by 4 inches. Officer Ruiz raised a palm before I could step closer. "Please stay where you are. I'm not going to touch anything. I believe you, I still need you behind me." The gym bag was wedged behind the shoe boxes, but not far enough. One black handle hung over the edge of the shelf. The zipper had been pulled almost closed, leaving a narrow opening near one corner. A clear plastic vial showed through the gap. Even from several feet away, I recognized the blue pharmacy band used by our outpatient procedure rooms. The officer photographed the closet, the boxes, the boot, the bag, and the carpet beneath it. Then he asked me to confirm on camera that I did not own the bag and had not placed it there. "I have never seen that bag before tonight," I said. "I have not touched it, opened it, or moved anything in this closet since returning." Ruiz asked whether I consented to officers securing the room while they contacted a detective and an evidence technician. Yes. The bedroom door closed behind them, and a strip of yellow tape went across the frame. I stood in the hallway staring at my mother's perfume bottle on the dresser. She had given it to me for Christmas, although I never wore perfume. The unopened box had sat there for 3 months. Only then did the plan begin to take shape. They had not meant for me to discover the bag that night. It was supposed to remain hidden until someone else came looking for it. Officer Ruiz led me downstairs, while another officer took a formal statement at the kitchen table. My answers stayed narrow. I gave times, names, locations, and the exact words I remembered. Whenever my mind tried to fill a gap, I stopped. "Do you believe your mother placed the bag?" the officer asked. "The entry log shows that her code opened my door," I said. The laptop contained photographs of the closet and a time window matching that entry. "I did not see her place the bag." He nodded and wrote down the distinction. Shortly after 10, Detective Carla Mendez arrived with an evidence technician. Detective Mendez was in her 40s, with tired eyes and a voice that never rose above the level of an ordinary conversation. She listened to my account, reviewed the photographs Evan had described in his written service note, and spoke with Leah by phone. Northgate agreed to secure the laptop until a proper preservation process could be arranged. The detective did not promise an arrest. She did not tell me the case was obvious. "What we have right now is a suspicious entry, an unknown bag in your house, and digital material that may be connected," Detective Mendez said. "We preserve first, we make conclusions later." "That is what I want," I said. Her gaze held mine for a moment. "Most people say they want that until the evidence becomes inconvenient. I work in compliance. Inconvenient evidence is usually the part that matters." A corner of her mouth moved, though it did not become a smile. Then you understand why I'm asking you not to discuss the contents of that laptop with anyone except your attorney. I understand. The bag was not searched in front of me. The technician documented the exterior, sealed the room, and followed the process, Detective Mendez explained. Because the bag contained visible medication and papers bearing patient information, the detective sought the legal authority needed before conducting a full examination. I packed enough clothing for 2 nights while an officer watched from the doorway. Every object I picked up had to be something outside the sealed closet area. At 11:26, my mother called again. This time, I let it go to voicemail. Her message arrived less than a minute later. "Natalie, your father says there are police at your house. Call me before you say anything else. This family does not need another misunderstanding turned into a public spectacle." Another misunderstanding. She had used the same phrase 8 years earlier, when a medication disposal report went missing, and I asked for an outside review. By the end of that week, the report had reappeared. My father had warned me about overreacting, and I had signed a corrective memo based on documents my mother provided. That old signature had seemed harmless then. Nothing in my house felt harmless now. Thomas called while Detective Mendez was finishing her notes. "Natalie, what exactly have you done?" my father asked. His greeting did not include my name. I reported an unauthorized entry into my home. Your mother says the door was open. The smart lock records which code opened it. A long breath passed through the phone. She was worried about you. Then why did she tell me she was standing outside when her code had already been used? You're treating your mother like a suspect. I'm describing what happened. Marissa is beside herself, he said. She asked you to save a presentation, and now strangers are going through her private files. The technician stopped as soon as he saw photographs of my bedroom. According to you, according to his service notes and the officer who interviewed him. My father lowered his voice. Listen carefully. Do not turn this into an accusation against your sister until we have all sat down together. There is a bag in my closet that does not belong to me. Then perhaps someone broke in, using Mom's code? She said the door was open. She changed her explanation. Thomas went silent. The kitchen clock marked 3 slow seconds. Marissa believes you have been watching her, he said. She says you've been going through clinic records outside your authority. I am the compliance director. You are also her sister, and lately you have blurred those roles. The line went quiet again before he spoke. We'll meet tomorrow morning, my father said. No police, no lawyers, just family. That will not happen. You're upset. I have an attorney, Dad. His voice hardened. You hired a lawyer against us? I hired a lawyer because the clinic records were not matching. The words had barely left my mouth when I knew I had given him more than Leah would have wanted me to say. Thomas did not ask which records. He asked, How long have you been planning this? I ended the call. At midnight, Leah booked a hotel room under her firm's account so my family would not see the charge through any shared business system. I drove there with an overnight bag while a patrol car remained near my house. Sleep did not come. Every time the heating unit clicked on, my body tightened beneath the blanket. I kept seeing the boot on the carpet, the closet door open, and that black handle hanging above the shelf. Detective Mendez called shortly after 7 on Saturday morning. The bag was examined under proper authorization, she said. I can give you a preliminary description, but not copies. I sat up and reached for the notebook beside the bed. Go ahead. There are several controlled medications associated with outpatient procedures, photocopied patient records, and an encrypted storage device. One container has a pharmacy label bearing your name. My pen stopped. I have never received controlled medication from our clinic. The prescribing physician listed is Dr. Marissa Blake. My sister had not only planned to place missing drugs in my home, she had prepared a medical explanation for why I might possess them. Detective Mendez continued. We are tracing lot numbers and reviewing the label. Do not contact Dr. Blake about it. I won't. After the call, I opened Marissa's voice message from the night before. Her breathing was uneven, but no tears interrupted her words. Natalie, I don't know what you saw, but you had no right to let some technician dig through my computer. Those files could belong to patients. Do you understand what you've done? You've exposed the clinic, embarrassed Dad, and sent police after Mom because she brought you dinner. A pause followed, long enough for her voice to steady. You've always needed everyone to know you're the smartest person in the room. This time, you went too far. I forwarded the message to Leah without replying. She called 5 minutes later. They're building a defense around your access to information, Leah said. From this point forward, every message you send may become part of their story. Do not give them emotional language they can quote. They put a prescription in my name. I know. My own sister signed it. Then let the records prove that. You do not need to persuade her. At 8:12, a calendar invitation appeared in my personal email. Emergency board meeting. Start time, 9 o'clock that morning. The notice gave me 48 minutes. I sent it to Leah, who called before I finished reading the agenda. The bylaws require at least 48 hours notice for an emergency meeting involving suspension of an officer, she said. They also have a conflict problem if the people accusing you are voting on your suspension. They control 70%. Majority ownership does not erase procedure. They may still lock your operational access, but we will object to the meeting and preserve the violation. At 8:23, my clinic password stopped working. At 8:31, a company-wide email reached my personal account because someone had copied my outside address. Natalie Blake was being placed on temporary administrative leave for unauthorized access to patient information, removal of confidential material, and suspected possession of medication belonging to the clinic. The email stated that management had received credible information that controlled drugs and patient files were being kept at my home. I read it twice. Then I checked the document properties. The message had been drafted the previous afternoon, before Marissa spilled coffee on the laptop, before I drove to Northgate, and before officers found the bag in my closet. A final line appeared beneath the allegations. Management had been alerted by a confidential source at 6:18 Friday evening. At 6:18, I was still driving across town with Marissa's laptop beside me. The anonymous accusation had been made before the bag was discovered. According to the timestamp, it had been made before my mother entered my house. At 8:37 on Saturday morning, Leah told me not to attend the emergency board meeting my parents had scheduled for 9. They gave you less than an hour's notice, she said. The bylaws require 48 hours for a vote involving suspension of an officer, and both people calling the meeting are directly involved in the accusations against you. They control 70% of the shares. They control the vote. They do not control the rules. I sat at the hotel desk with the company email open on my laptop. The room smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and coffee from the machine downstairs. Outside, a snowplow scraped the parking lot in slow, grinding passes. What happens if I don't attend? I asked. They will vote without you. And if I attend without you? They will say you had an opportunity to respond. Leah's voice stayed calm, but the meaning landed cleanly. My family had not invited me to explain. They had invited me to legitimize a decision already made. Send them an objection, I said. State that I'll participate after proper notice, access to the allegations, and time for counsel to review the evidence. I already drafted it. That was why I had hired her. At 8:44, Leah sent the objection to Thomas, Judith, Marissa, the clinic's outside accountant, and the attorney whose name appeared on the meeting notice. She requested a postponement, preservation of all records, and confirmation that no one would alter my access history or patient files while the dispute was pending. No one answered. At 9:16, a PDF arrived in my personal email. The document called itself minutes from an emergency meeting, although it read like a verdict. Thomas had chaired the session. Judith had served as secretary. Marissa had been listed as an affected party and allowed to speak, while I had been marked absent despite Leah's written objection. The vote was 70% in favor of suspension, 15% abstaining on Marissa's behalf, and 15% unable to vote because my access had already been disabled. They counted your shares as unable to vote after locking you out, Leah said when I forwarded the document. They also changed the time. The notice said the meeting began at 9. The minutes claimed it began at 8:55, 5 minutes before the scheduled start. Leah went quiet while she examined the metadata. The file was created at 7:41 this morning, she said. The minutes existed before the meeting. That did not restore my password or put my name back on my office door. Procedure could be violated in minutes and challenged for months. Still, the file gave us something useful. Proof that my suspension had been prepared before anyone pretended to hear my response. I saved the notice, Leah's objection, the original email headers, and the meeting minutes in a folder outside every Blake family system. Then I wrote down the sequence on paper. Time had become more important than accusation. a person could argue about motives. A timestamp did not care who cried first. By noon, clinic employees had received instructions not to contact me about company business. The message described me as a potential threat to patient privacy and warned that sharing information could interfere with an internal investigation. A nurse named Kelly, who had worked beside me for 9 years, texted my personal phone. "I'm sorry. They told us not to respond." A second message appeared, then vanished before I opened it. No one called. I did not blame them. Most of our employees had mortgages, children, medical insurance, and no ownership stake in the family name. Thomas signed their paychecks. Judith approved their schedules. Marissa treated the patients whose appointments kept the doors open. For years, I had been the person they came to when a chart was wrong or a vendor payment went missing. One email had turned me into the person they had been warned about. The distance spread beyond the clinic. A hospital administrator who had agreed to meet me the following week canceled without explanation. An insurance consultant replied that she needed clarification regarding my current authority before discussing any records. The independent audit was scheduled for Monday morning. I had arranged it 1 week earlier, after 6 months of discrepancies stopped resembling clerical mistakes. It had begun with disposal forms. Our outpatient procedure rooms stocked controlled medications used during injections and minor procedures. Every vial had to be tracked. If part of a dose remained unused, 2 authorized people were supposed to witness the disposal and sign the record. In September, I found 3 forms missing a second signature. Judith said a nurse had forgotten to initial them. In November, 2 patients appeared in billing reports, but not on the appointment calendar. Marissa said they had been added during an urgent weekend clinic. In January, medication quantities showed as used on days when the procedure rooms had closed early. Each explanation could stand by itself. Together they leaned in the same direction. I started a formal internal review and requested original source records. Judith gave me summaries. Marissa complained that my questions disrupted patient care. Thomas suggested we wait until the next quarter so we would not alarm our insurer during contract renewal. I did not wait. 2 weeks before the laptop incident, I contacted Leah. 1 week before it, I scheduled an independent compliance review for Monday, March 24th. The reviewer was supposed to receive a controlled export of records, not unrestricted access to the clinic. I had not told my father the final date because some part of me still wanted to approach him first with a complete pattern instead of scattered concerns. That choice cost me time. It did not cause what they did, but it gave them room to move before I brought anyone from outside the family into the building. On Monday morning, the independent reviewer emailed to say Thomas had canceled the engagement. The explanation was brief. Natalie Blake no longer has authority to retain your services. All compliance matters are being handled internally. I forwarded the message to Leah. Do not contact the clinic systems, she said. Not even to check what they changed. I still have lawful copies created under the retention policy. Then we work from those. Nothing new after suspension. 3 years earlier, after a vendor corrupted a set of billing records, I had convinced the board to purchase an outside archival service. Every Friday night, the system created a read-only snapshot of designated compliance data and stored it with an independent provider. Marissa had called it my data cemetery, paying thousands of dollars to preserve dead files, she said during one budget meeting. Only Natalie could turn hoarding into a corporate policy. The board approved it because an insurer recommended it, not because my sister respected the idea. By Monday afternoon, that cemetery was the only place my family could not enter with an administrator password and rearrange the headstones. I logged into the archival provider through my personal compliance credential. The account showed snapshots through the previous Friday, but my authority after suspension was limited to viewing index information. I could see that the files existed, their dates, their sizes, and the systems from which they originated. I could not legally export or decrypt the full contents without a documented request. For once, the restriction helped me. If I could not change those files, neither could Judith. I shared my screen with Leah and an information security specialist she retained. His name was Omar Patel, and he spoke with the careful patience of someone accustomed to lawyers asking technical questions twice. The archive records what came from the source systems at the time of capture, Omar said. If someone alters a user, facing PDF later, the earlier version remains here. Can an administrator at the clinic delete the archive? No, they can request deletion, but the provider retains the request log and requires approval under the contract. Can they change who uploaded a document? Not in the historical snapshot. A list of weekly files filled the screen. Medication logs, billing exports, patient index tables, document audit reports. Nothing could be opened yet, but their existence gave us a boundary around the truth. Leah asked Omar to preserve the account information and prepare the proper request. We did not go fishing through patient records. We identified only the categories tied to the allegations and the dates already under dispute. When the call ended, I stayed at the hotel desk and listened to the heating unit cycle off. For the first time since Friday night, the room became quiet enough for an older memory to surface. 8 years earlier, I had signed a corrective report after a medication disposal form disappeared. The original should have remained in my professional files. I drove home on Tuesday after Detective Mendez confirmed the police had finished the initial evidence work in my bedroom. The closet still carried an evidence seal, but I could enter the office downstairs. My personal file box sat beneath the desk, filled with tax documents, licenses, old evaluations, and copies of reports that had once seemed important enough to keep. The document lay near the bottom. Its pages had yellowed slightly around the edges. A rust-colored mark showed where a staple had been removed and replaced. Judith had prepared the summary. Thomas had reviewed it. I had signed the final page beneath a paragraph, stating that the missing disposal record resulted from a documentation error with no evidence of diversion. I remembered the conference room that afternoon. Marissa had not yet joined the ownership group. Thomas was negotiating a new insurance contract, and Judith kept repeating that an outside report could cost 60 employees their jobs. The missing form reappeared the next day. I accepted the explanation and signed. Leah came to my house that evening. I placed the report between us on the dining table but kept my hand on the final page. I should have requested an independent review, I said. Did you know the conclusion was false? No, I knew the process was incomplete. Those are different things. They will not sound different when my family shows this to investigators. Leah read every page before speaking. This can be used against your judgment. It may support an argument that you previously approved the same controls you are now criticizing. I thought you would tell me not to hand it over. I'm telling you not to hide it. Those are not the same instruction. My thumb moved over the indentation left by my signature. What if this is the first brick in the wall they built around me? I asked. Then we need to know who had the brick. On Wednesday morning, the clinic's attorney sent Leah a packet that supposedly supported my suspension. Most of it repeated the allegations already circulated to employees. One document was different. It was a recent medication reconciliation report dated February 7th. Near the bottom, my name appeared beneath a statement confirming that all quantities had been reviewed and matched to procedure records. The signature looked like mine. It was not. I enlarged the page until the ink broke into pixels. The first stroke of the N leaned too far right. A tiny gap appeared between two letters where my pen had skipped on the old paper. Even the faint gray dot beneath the final line was present. I placed the 8-year-old report beside the new PDF. Every defect matched. They copied it, I said. Leah compared the pages. Not just the shape. This is the same image. The recent report did not contain a valid digital signature, certificate, or verification trail. Someone had scanned my old handwritten signature, cropped it, and placed it beneath a document created years later. According to the packet, I had approved records I had never seen. Leah asked Omar to examine the PDF metadata without altering the file. The document had been assembled on a computer assigned to operations, then exported through a shared administrative software license. That narrowed the source, but it did not identify the person at the keyboard. Who had access to the original scan? Leah asked. I looked at the old report again. The copy I held had remained in my private files, but the official version belonged to the company. My father kept the shareholder and governance records, I said. My mother kept the operating files. Marissa had built the laptop folder. My mother's code had opened my door. Now my signature had been lifted from an 8-year-old report held by my parents. For the first time, the circle around my sister widened. By Monday, March 31st, my family had spent 9 days telling anyone who would listen that I was unstable, vindictive, and willing to misuse patient information to punish my sister. I spent that Monday searching for a woman I had failed 3 years earlier. Diane Carter had managed medication inventory at our main clinic for almost a decade. She knew every procedure room, every supplier, and every nurse who waited until Friday afternoon to report a missing form. When Judith fired her, the official explanation said Diane had repeatedly entered inaccurate numbers and refused corrective coaching. I had signed off on that conclusion. Leah found Diane through public records and a professional licensing directory. We did not use the personnel database, old payroll files, or anything connected to the clinic systems. A forwarding address led to a small medical supply company 30 miles north of the city, where Diane worked 4 days a week processing orders. She returned Leah's call but refused to speak over the phone. "She'll meet us tomorrow," Leah told me. "A diner off Route 9, noon." Did she ask why? She already knows why. The diner had red vinyl booths, chipped white mugs, and a bell above the door that rang every time the wind pushed someone inside. Bacon grease and burnt toast hung in the air. An old country song played softly beneath the clatter of silverware. Diane sat in the last booth beside the window. Her dark hair, once worn in a tight bun at the clinic, had been cut short around her jaw. A blue folder rested on the table beside her coffee. She did not stand when Leah and I approached. "You look well," I said. "That is what people say when they expected you to look ruined," Diane replied. Leah introduced herself and explained that she represented me personally, not the clinic. Diane listened without touching the folder. "I agreed to meet because I wanted to see her face," she told Leah. Then her eyes moved to me. "Do you only believe me now because they chose you as the next person to blame?" The waitress appeared with menus. Diane ordered another coffee. Leah asked for tea, and I requested nothing. When the waitress left, I placed both hands flat on the table. "I should have investigated your warning further," I said. I accepted documents prepared by my mother, and I treated the lack of proof as proof that nothing had happened. Diane's mouth tightened. "You wrote that there was no evidence to support my allegations." I did. "You did not write that you had looked in the wrong places." "No." "You did not write that your mother controlled the records you reviewed." "No." The coffee machine hissed behind the counter. A spoon struck the side of a mug 3 booths away. "I am not asking you to forgive me," I said. "I am asking whether you kept any documents that belonged to you legally, such as emails you sent, personal notes, or copies of your own employment records." Diane studied me for several seconds. "You used to speak just like that when you wanted people to know you were being fair." The sentence landed harder because it was true. "I probably did," I said. She turned her mug between both hands. "After they fired me, my insurance ended at the close of the month. My husband was between jobs, and our youngest daughter needed physical therapy after knee surgery. We sold our house before the bank could start asking questions." "I did not know that." "You never asked." My fingers pressed into the tabletop. Diane continued without raising her voice. "Judith told 2 clinic managers that I had been caught changing medication records. By the time I applied anywhere nearby, everyone had heard some version of it. One employer asked whether I had ever been investigated for diversion. Were you? No. They never reported me because a real investigation would have required showing the records." Leah leaned forward. "Do you have proof that Judith spread that explanation?" "I have the reference letter she refused to sign, the termination notice, and an email from a manager who apologized for repeating what she was told." Diane tapped the blue folder. "None of that proves what happened at the clinic." "It may prove retaliation," Leah said. "That matters." Diane looked at me again. "What do you want from me, Natalie?" "The truth you tried to give me 3 years ago. And when it hurts your case, I still want it." Her fingers remained on the folder for another moment before she pushed it across the table. Inside were copies of emails Diane had sent from her personal account, handwritten notes from meetings, her termination papers, and a memo she had prepared for Judith. There were no patient charts or prescription labels. She had not stolen protected records on her way out. The first email was dated April 7th, 3 years earlier. Diane had written that the physical count in Procedure Room 2 was lower than the electronic count. She listed 6 files by medication name and lot number, then noted that Judith had instructed her to adjust the inventory because several entries had been duplicated. A reply from Judith appeared beneath it. Fix the count before close. We are not carrying another clerical error into the quarterly review. Diane had responded that changing the number without locating the medication would make the system match the shelf but would not explain the loss. Judith's answer consisted of one sentence. I am not asking for an investigation, Diane. I am asking you to correct an entry. I remembered reviewing that exchange. At the time, Judith had shown me a duplicate receiving report and explained that the same shipment had been counted twice. The document looked convincing. The arithmetic worked. I had not called the supplier. I had not checked the receiving camera. I had not asked why the physical inventory had been correct the week before. The next page contained the email Diane had sent me directly. Natalie, I do not believe the missing quantity is a receiving error. This is the third time Mrs. Blake has asked me to change a count without a discrepancy report. I am requesting an independent review. My own response sat beneath it. Thank you for raising the concern. I reviewed the receiving documents and found no evidence of diversion or intentional misstatement. Please follow the corrected inventory procedure provided by operations. The words were polite, clean, and useless. 3 years earlier, I had read that message as proof that I had handled a complaint professionally. Sitting across from Diane, I saw what it lacked. No follow-up question, no request for her notes. No acknowledgement that the person accused of ordering the change had supplied the documents clearing herself. I closed the matter in 4 sentences, I said. You closed my career in 4 sentences, Diane replied. Leah did not interrupt us. I cannot undo what happened to you, I said, but I will provide a written correction, stating that your warning was not fully investigated and that the finding used in your termination should not be treated as reliable. Diane gave a small, humorless laugh. Your name is not worth much at the clinic right now. No, it isn't. I'll still sign it. Something shifted in her expression, though the guarded line of her mouth remained. She pulled a black notebook from her purse. These are my own notes. Dates, room numbers, inventory totals, and what I was told. No patient names. Leah examined the first few pages. Did you make these entries at the time? Usually the same day, sometimes that evening. Have you changed anything since leaving? No. Would you permit us to make a forensic copy while you keep the original? Diane glanced at me. I'll permit your office to copy it. Natalie does not take it home. That is reasonable, I said. After lunch, we moved to Leah's office. Omar joined us by video while Diane read dates from her notebook. I opened only compliance reports I had lawfully retained before my suspension, and Leah controlled which information appeared on the screen. We began with inventory totals, room schedules, and disposal records. A pattern emerged slowly. On several days when Diane had been told to correct missing quantities, the clinic's procedure calendar showed unusually high medication use. Yet, the billing summaries listed fewer completed procedures than the medication logs supported. Sometimes the opposite occurred. Insurance claims showed a treatment had taken place, but the corresponding room schedule contained no appointment. 1 case could have been entered late. 2 might have been scheduling errors. By the 6th, no one in the room offered an innocent explanation. Diane pointed to a date in her notebook. Judith told me to change 8 vials to spoiled stock that day. The compliance export listed only 2 vials as discarded. Did she give you a destruction form? I asked. She gave me one the next morning. The witness signature belonged to a nurse who was on vacation. Did you report that? To you. I found the email. Diane had attached the nurse's schedule and asked whether the form should be rejected. My reply said operations had confirmed the nurse signed it before leaving. I remember calling Mom, I said. Did you call the nurse? No. Diane folded her arms. That was the problem. Every road led back to Judith, and you kept asking Judith whether the road was safe. The muscles along my jaw tightened, but there was nothing to argue. We worked for 3 hours. By the end, Leah had prepared a list of dates for lawful records requests. Diane's notes did not prove theft or fraud by themselves, but they showed that warnings had been made, that Judith had directed inventory changes, and that the same kinds of discrepancies had continued after Diane was gone. One name appeared repeatedly in the limited patient index attached to my old audit reports. Monica Hayes. The first entry showed a consultation. The next showed a procedure. Several months later, another claim listed medication administered during a second procedure, though the room log contained no matching appointment. "We do not contact her ourselves," Leah said. "We request the relevant information through proper channels and determine whether she already has counsel." Diane stared at the name. "I remember that one." "You said your notes contain no patient names," Leah reminded her. "They don't. I remember hearing Judith argue with Marissa after a transfer to the hospital. Marissa said the patient's name twice." "What transfer?" I asked. Diane looked toward the window, where late sunlight struck the glass of the building across the street. "I don't know whether it was Monica," she said. "But that was when everything changed." Before she could explain, Leah's assistant knocked and entered with a printed email. "This was sent to all clinic staff 10 minutes ago," she said. Marissa had written it. The message claimed I was recruiting former employees who held grudges against the Blake family. It warned staff that confidential information might be twisted into support for a personal campaign against the clinic. A short audio file was attached. Leah played it once. My own voice filled the room. "Marissa is careless, defensive, and dangerous when anyone questions her judgment." The recording ended there. Diane raised one eyebrow. "Did you say it?" "Yes." "When?" "At a management meeting last December." "What came before it?" I remembered the discussion. A nurse had reported that Marissa changed a procedure note after being questioned about a medication dose. Thomas accused me of turning a documentation dispute into a personal attack. My full sentence was that treating every correction as a personal insult made Marissa careless, defensive, and dangerous when anyone questioned her judgment. "And after it?" Leah asked. I said she needed an independent chart review and temporary limits on late entries. Omar examined the file information. "This clip was exported yesterday. The source appears to be a recording from the main conference room system." "My father controls those recordings," I said. "The insult was mine. The missing context belonged to them." By the next morning, 2 employees had removed me from their social media contacts. A former clinic consultant emailed Leah to say she would not participate in a family dispute. My relatives began leaving messages about jealousy, loyalty, and the danger of destroying a business that served the community. I responded to none of them. Diane returned to Leah's office on Thursday with another page from her notebook. She had marked one date with a square around it: Friday, September 29th, 2023. "A patient had a serious reaction after a procedure," she said. "An ambulance came through the rear entrance because Judith did not want people in the waiting room to see." "Was Marissa the treating physician?" I asked. "Yes." That night, Marissa went back into the chart and added notes. She said the patient had failed to disclose medication use. "How do you know what she added?" I heard her arguing with a nurse who refused to sign the late entry. Diane slid the notebook toward Leah, but kept one hand on its edge. The next morning, Judith told me the drug count for that room was wrong. She ordered me to replace the inventory page and mark 2 vials as destroyed after contamination. "Was there a witness?" I asked. "Not when I was there." "What happened to the original page?" "Judith took it. The office seemed smaller around us," Diane continued. After that case, Marissa started adding notes days after procedures. Judith began reviewing inventory before I saw it. Within 6 months, they fired me. "Do you know the patient's name?" Leah asked. "No, the chart was removed from the normal review list before the next audit. I only kept the date because it was the first time they asked me to replace an entire page instead of changing one number." Leah sent the date to Omar and requested that it be added to the preservation demand. We still needed lawful access to the patient index and the archived version of the audit list. Until then, we had a date, an ambulance transfer, a late chart entry, and a missing inventory page. It was not enough to accuse anyone. It was enough to know where to look. The following afternoon, Leah called while I was sitting at my dining table, surrounded by copies of the documents my family had used against me. "We identified the patient connected to the September transfer," she said. "Was it Monica Hayes?" "Yes." I reached for a pen. "There is more," Leah continued. "Her insurer paid Blake Family Pain and Wellness for a later procedure and medication administration. The claim was approved, and the clinic marked the service as completed." "What did Monica say?" Leah's next words changed the case from a fight over my name into something much larger. "Monica says she never received that procedure. Monica Hayes agreed to meet only after Leah explained that I no longer represented Blake Family Pain and Wellness, had no access to her current medical records, and was speaking through my own attorney. We met on Monday, April 7th, in a conference room at Leah's office. Monica arrived 10 minutes early, carrying a canvas tote and a thick envelope held together with a rubber band. She was 51, with silver beginning at her temples, and the careful posture of someone accustomed to being doubted before she finished speaking. Her attorney attended by video. Leah sat beside me, not across from Monica, and reminded everyone that the meeting was voluntary. Monica removed a hospital letter from the envelope and placed it on the table. "This followed me for 18 months, she said. The letter summarized an emergency room visit after the procedure Marissa had performed in September. It described Monica as displaying behavior consistent with seeking controlled medication and questioned whether her reported pain matched the clinical findings. My eyes stayed on the sentence near the bottom. The hospital had relied in part on records from our clinic. "What happened during that visit?" Leah asked. Monica folded her hands around the strap of her tote. "I told them the pain was worse than anything I had felt before the injection. The doctor asked how much medication I had already received that month. I said none except what Dr. Blake gave me during the procedure." Her voice remained even, but one thumb kept rubbing the same worn place on the canvas. He turned the computer toward himself and said the clinic records showed several administrations. I told him that was impossible. Then he asked whether I had prescriptions from another doctor. "Did you?" I asked. "No." The emergency physician treated her nausea and discharged her with instructions to follow up with Marissa. The pain continued. A second hospital admitted her 2 days later, where imaging showed a complication that required treatment. Monica opened the envelope again. "My employer placed me on unpaid leave because I missed too many shifts. My daughter drove 3 hours to search my medicine cabinet. She did not say she thought I was addicted, but she counted every bottle. No tears came. Monica did not need them. She called my sister afterward," she continued. "They discussed whether I should be trusted alone. I learned that 6 months later." The room's ventilation system clicked above us. Somewhere down the hall, a printer began feeding pages. For years, I had reviewed records through columns, exception reports, and red flags on a screen, missing signatures, duplicate claims, entries added after the date of service. Each problem fit inside a cell. Monica had lost wages, medical care, and the trust of her own daughter, because someone at my family's clinic had placed false information inside those cells. Leah slid a copy of the disputed claim across the table. "This says you received another procedure on February 9th of last year," she said. "Do you remember where you were that day?" Monica pulled a funeral program from the envelope. "I was in Savannah, Georgia, burying my brother. The program listed his service at 11 that morning." A hotel receipt covered the surrounding nights, and a photograph showed Monica standing beside her sister outside the church. The clinic record claimed Marissa treated her at 1:15 that afternoon, more than 700 miles away. "I called the billing department when my insurer sent the explanation of benefits," Monica said. "A woman told me it was probably coded under the wrong date." 2 weeks later, I received a revised statement that still showed the procedure. "Did you speak with anyone else?" I asked. "I left a message for you." The words sat between us. "When?" I asked. "Late February, maybe early March." I searched my memory and found nothing. Monica reached into her tote and produced a printed call log from her phone. The number belonged to my direct office line. The call had lasted 4 minutes and 27 seconds. "I did not receive that message," I said. "You may not have," Monica replied. "A woman called me back. She said she worked with you and had reviewed the file personally." "Did she give her name?" "No." "She said the claim was correct and warned me that repeated disputes could cause my insurer to review all my prescriptions. My mother often returned calls from the compliance queue when she said I was too busy." "I'm sorry," I said. Monica looked at me without softening. "You did not create that record." "No." "But your name was on the department that told me it was valid." "Yes." That answer cost less than an excuse and meant more. The next morning, Omar walked Leah and me through the first report from the software provider. We had requested a narrow set of system logs tied to Monica's records, the February claim, and the reconciliation report bearing my copied signature. The user-facing PDF showed an effective date of February 7th. Judith's explanation had been that the document existed before the claim and proved I approved the medication totals. The provider's record told a different story. This file was uploaded on March 24th, Omar said. 3 days after your access was disabled. Whose account? Leah asked. Judith Blake's administrator account. He shared his screen, keeping patient information hidden except for the authorized document identifiers. The log showed the real upload time, the device identifier assigned to Judith's office computer, and the original file name. The effective date printed inside the PDF had been entered manually. It was not the system creation date. She backdated the document people could see, I said. She changed the date displayed on the form, Omar corrected. She did not change the provider log. That is why these records do not match. The PDF also carried the image of my old signature. Its visible approval date was February 7th, but the file containing that signature did not enter the system until after I was suspended. Someone had created a record saying I approved medication totals weeks earlier, then uploaded it after I could no longer defend myself inside the system. What about Monica's chart? I asked. Omar moved to the access history. Marissa opened Monica's record on the night of the original complication. She returned to it after midnight, and again the next morning. Several months later, her account accessed the chart on the day the false procedure was added. Judith's administrator account then changed the document status from pending to final. The system did not show what they said to one another. It showed where each person placed her hands. At noon, Leah's assistant brought in a courier envelope from the clinic's attorney. The proposed agreement ran 23 pages. My family offered to purchase my 15% interest at a price above its most recent valuation. They would cover a portion of my legal fees, provide a neutral employment reference, and withdraw the internal allegations if the police investigation did not produce charges against me. In exchange, I had to resign from every position, surrender all copies of clinic data, agree not to contact employees or patients, and sign a confidentiality provision covering nearly every event that had occurred since I joined the business. They are offering you enough money to live comfortably, Leah said. They are buying silence. They are trying to. That does not mean we answer today. A clause required me to certify that I possessed no documents, notes, backups, photographs, or recordings belonging to the clinic. They know the archive exists, I said. They may know it exists. They may not know what it preserved. My phone vibrated while Leah read the remaining pages. Judith had sent an old family photograph. Marissa and I were children, sitting on the front steps of the first house my parents owned. My mother stood behind us with one hand on each of our shoulders. Thomas held a garden hose and laughed at something outside the frame. Beneath the photograph, Judith had written, "We can still keep this house standing." I showed Leah. "Do not respond," she said. I wasn't planning to. Yet I kept looking at the picture. My mother had taught me how to braid my hair in that house. She had slept beside me on the living room floor during a thunderstorm when I was 9. Years later, she had helped arrange the closet in my current home, placing my winter boots behind the storage boxes because she said I wasted space. That memory had once belonged to Care. Now someone had used it to choose where evidence should be hidden. On Thursday afternoon, Evan and the forensic examiner joined us by video. The police had authorized a forensic image of Marissa's laptop, and the examiner had completed a report limited to the recovered material connected to my home and the planned entry. Most deleted files were incomplete. Some showed only file names. Others contained fragments of images or audio that could not be reconstructed. One voice memo had survived well enough to play. The examiner warned us that the beginning was missing and the last seconds were distorted. Then a burst of static filled Leah's office. Marissa's voice followed. "Mom already chose the location, top shelf. She says Natalie never looks behind the winter boots." A scrape crossed the recording, followed by another sentence too damaged to understand. The file ended. No one spoke for several seconds. The winter boots had been on that shelf since my mother helped reorganize the closet. She knew I rarely reached behind them because she had watched me place empty shoeboxes there, then laughed when I said the arrangement made sense. Marissa's laptop did not merely contain photographs of my room. The recording showed that Judith had chosen the hiding place herself. "Can you establish when the memo was recorded?" Leah asked. "The embedded date is consistent with the other recovered files," the examiner said. "The device clock appears accurate, but we will state that within the limits of the analysis. Does the file contain Judith's voice? No, only Dr. Marissa Blake. It did not prove every part of my mother's role, but it tied Marissa's words to the location officers found that night. Combined with Judith's door code, the camera sleeve, and the bag behind the boots, the pattern had stopped looking like separate coincidences. Marissa had helped plan it. My mother had designed it. That evening, Leah placed the 8-year-old corrective report on the table beside the new forensic summary. "We need to discuss this before any broader disclosure," she said. I already knew which document she meant. The old report contained my genuine signature beneath a conclusion I had accepted without an independent review. It showed that my mother had controlled the supporting records, but it also showed that I had allowed her to. "If we submit the recent evidence first, can we leave this out until someone asks for older records?" I said. Leah did not answer immediately. "Can we legally delay it?" I asked. "In some stages, we can provide responsive material according to the scope of a request. We do not have to volunteer every document in your possession at the same moment." "That is not what I asked." Her eyes stayed on mine. "If this report becomes relevant to the history of the signature, the control failures, or your prior knowledge, you cannot conceal it. Deliberately withholding it could damage your credibility and create a separate problem. It may expose me to professional discipline. Yes, my family will use it to say I approved the same system I am attacking now. They will." I picked up the report. The paper felt softer than the recent copies, worn at the fold from years in my file box. For 8 years, I had treated that signature as evidence of a problem resolved. Now, it could be read as evidence that I had failed to ask enough questions. "I need time," I said. "You have some," Leah replied. "Not forever." I placed the report inside a separate red folder and carried it home. Just after 9 that night, my phone chimed with a message from Judith. She sent the name of a restaurant near the river and a time for the following evening. Then another message appeared. "Your father does not know everything. If you still want to save him, come alone." My mother's message remained on my screen until the letters blurred beneath the reflection of the kitchen light. "Your father does not know everything. If you still want to save him, come alone." Judith had chosen every word with care. Not "talk to me," not "hear my side." She had placed my father at the center of the invitation because she knew he was the one person I still wanted to believe had been carried along by everyone else's decisions. I forwarded the message to Leah. Her reply came less than a minute later. "Do not answer yet." She called while I was still standing beside the dining table. "You are not meeting her alone," Leah said. "She will leave if she sees you." Then she leaves. I need to know what she means about Dad. You want to know whether he can still be separated from this. I lowered myself into a chair. The old corrective report lay inside the red folder near my elbow, its copied signature connecting my father's files to documents created years later. "Yes," I said. Leah let the silence hold for a moment. "Then we arrange the meeting so she believes she has privacy without giving her control. Public place. You drive yourself. I know when you arrive and leave. You carry no original records, no laptop, and nothing she can take from you. What about recording it? We are not building this case around a secret recording. You will take notes as soon as the meeting ends, and anything she says will be checked against evidence we can prove independently." We chose the restaurant Judith had named because Leah knew the layout. The dining room faced the river, while a separate lounge near the entrance offered enough distance for her to remain out of my mother's view. Leah booked a table there under another name. Before I left home the next evening, we reviewed 2 possible paths. The first was an internal transfer plan. It required my family to surrender operational control, preserve the clinic under outside supervision, suspend high-risk services, protect payroll during the review, and notify anyone whose records might be wrong. The second was the external packet Leah had been preparing for the appropriate agencies, insurers, and licensing bodies. Neither document came with me. I carried only a single page listing the conditions under which I would consider delaying broader action long enough for an orderly handover. Judith arrived at 6:58, 2 minutes before the reservation. My mother had always considered punctuality a form of superiority. She entered wearing a cream wool coat over a navy dress, her gray blonde hair pinned neatly behind her ears. Nothing about her suggested that police had traced her personal door code to my house, or that medication from her clinic had been found inside my closet. She kissed the air beside my cheek. "You look tired," she said. "You look prepared." Judith removed her gloves finger by finger, placed them beside her purse, and sat across from me. Before the server could offer menus, my mother ordered grilled salmon for herself and chicken with roasted vegetables for me. "I can choose my own dinner," I said. "You have ordered the same thing here since you were 25. I have not been here since I was 30. A practiced smile appeared. "Then perhaps some things are worth remembering." I changed the order to soup and coffee. Judith waited until the server left before placing both hands on the table. Her nails were pale pink, trimmed to the same length they had been for as long as I could remember. "I was not trying to send you to prison," she said. The river moved black beyond the window. Lights from the opposite bank broke across the surface, in long, trembling lines. "You put controlled medication and patient records in my bedroom." The plan was to create doubt. Doubt does not remain under family control once the police are involved. "We did not expect you to find anything that night. You expected someone else to find it later." Judith drew a slow breath. "The clinic would report missing inventory. You would be placed on leave. The outside review would stop until the ownership dispute was resolved. And then? We would hire the best attorney available. The amount involved was small. There would have been room to explain, negotiate, and protect you from the worst outcome." She said it as though she had planned a difficult dental procedure on my behalf. "You prepared a prescription in my name. Marissa prepared documentation showing a lawful reason for you to possess the medication. She created a false medical record to keep the situation from becoming more serious." I stared at her. Judith lowered her voice. "You would have resigned. The clinic would have paid you fairly for your shares, covered your legal expenses, and helped you establish yourself somewhere else. Within a year, perhaps 2, you would have had another position. You designed a criminal accusation and included career counseling." Her expression did not change. "I designed a contained problem." "No, Mom. You opened a door you had no power to close." The server returned with coffee and water. Judith thanked him warmly, asked about his family, and waited until he moved out of hearing range. Then she leaned toward me. "You are speaking as though there were good options." "There was the option of not falsifying patient records. That stopped being available long before Friday night." The sentence came quietly, with no attempt to take it back. "How long?" I asked. Judith looked toward the river. "Long enough that pulling one thread would have taken the entire business with it." "Did it begin with Monica Hayes?" My mother's gaze returned to me. A faint movement passed through her jaw. "I am not discussing patients. You already used them as props in false claims. And you are already speaking like someone who has decided the clinic is nothing but a crime scene. What should I call a place that billed for treatment never provided?" "A place with 186 employees," Judith replied. "A place that treated thousands of people last year. A place that pays health insurance, retirement contributions, school tuition, rent, and mortgages for families who had nothing to do with Marissa's mistake." There it was, not denial, arithmetic. My mother had always been good with numbers that made other people's suffering look manageable. The food arrived. Judith unfolded her napkin and laid it across her lap, though she did not touch her salmon. "When I was 13, your grandfather lost our house," she said. "He signed a loan for his brother and never told my mother. One morning, men came to the door with papers. By the end of the month, we were sleeping in my aunt's basement. I had heard pieces of the story, though never from Judith in one sitting. My mother asked relatives for money," she continued. "People who had eaten at our table began speaking to her as though poverty were a disease she might spread. I watched her thank them for leftovers. I watched her apologize for taking up space. The fingers around her water glass tightened. I promised myself I would never stand in anyone's kitchen and beg to remain in my own home. Your father built the medical practice, but I built the business around it. Every contract, every new location, every relationship in this city came through these hands." She lifted one hand slightly, then rested it again on the table. "The clinic is not only a company, Natalie. It is proof that what happened to my mother did not happen to me, and that proof mattered more than what happened to Monica. I did not know the full extent of her complication until later, but once you knew, you changed records. I protected what could still be protected." Whom? Judith's eyes sharpened. Your father is 68. His health is not what he tells you it is. Marissa is a doctor. Her license is the center of her life, and the clinic depends on her name with patients. You, on the other hand, can walk into another company tomorrow and make yourself necessary before lunch. The coffee cup warmed my palms. So that is why you chose me. You were the only choice that left a future for everyone. You mean a future for everyone except me? My mother's voice softened. I chose you because you are the only one strong enough to survive it. For a moment, I heard rain striking the windows of our first house and remembered Judith sitting on the floor beside my bed during a thunderstorm. The woman across from me had once kept a flashlight under my pillow because I was afraid of the dark. Now she was explaining that my strength made me the safest person to destroy. I was not stronger, I said. I was more convenient. Call it what you like. You would have recovered. You do not get to measure how much of my life I can afford to lose. Judith picked up her fork, cut a piece of salmon, then placed it back on the plate without eating it. We can still settle this, she said. You resign voluntarily. We purchase your shares above valuation. Marissa steps away from procedures for several months, while a compliance firm reviews the records. We correct what can be corrected and refund questionable claims without causing panic. Which compliance firm? I have names. Firms that work for you. Firms that understand businesses cannot survive if every error becomes a public hanging. I took the folded page from my purse and placed it between us. These are my conditions. Judith read them without moving anything except her eyes. Marissa would stop practicing pending an independent clinical review. Judith would surrender all administrative access. Thomas and the board would make voluntary disclosures. An outside monitor would control the data, medication, inventory, and patient notification process. Any patient whose chart had been changed would be told. Payroll and patient transfers would be protected through a supervised transition fund. By the time she reached the bottom, my mother's mouth had flattened. This is not a transfer, she said. This is surrender. It keeps the clinic operating while removing the people who corrupted it. It destroys our name. It protects the employees you keep using as an argument. No one will lend money to us under outside supervision. Insurers will suspend contracts. Patients will leave. Some will. Others can be transferred safely. You make it sound so clean. It will not be clean. Then why pretend this saves anyone? Because your proposal saves control. Mine saves what can still operate without lying. Judith pushed the page back toward me. You have always mistaken rules for morality, and you have mistaken survival for permission. Her gaze moved past my shoulder. I did not turn to see whether Leah was visible from the lounge. Instead, my mother opened her purse and removed a thin envelope. Inside were 4 family photographs. One showed Christmas at my parents' house. Marissa stood beside Thomas near the tree, while Judith held a wrapped gift. I appeared at the far edge, half turned toward the dining room with a stack of plates in my hands. In another, taken at the first clinic's anniversary, my parents and sister faced the camera beneath a banner. Only my shoulder appeared beside Marissa, because I had stepped away to help an employee whose child had fallen near the entrance. The third showed a summer barbecue. Everyone else sat at the table. I stood behind them, holding the serving bowl. Judith placed the final photograph on top. The 4 of us stood on the front steps of our childhood home. I was 11, and Marissa was 7. My mother's hands rested on our shoulders. You are going to erase all of this, she said. No. I am refusing to let it erase what you did. Your father has a heart condition. He has mild arrhythmia. I know because I drove him to the cardiologist. Stress makes it worse. So does committing fraud. Marissa may never practice again. That decision belongs to the licensing board after they see the records. 186 employees may lose their insurance. That is why I proposed a transition fund. With what money? The family assets, officer insurance, and whatever remains after restitution. Judith's chair moved back an inch. You would take our home. I did not put your home at risk. You did. For the first time that evening, something unsteady passed across her face. It lasted less than a second. Then the calm returned. I gathered the photographs and placed them back inside the envelope. I will not agree to your terms. You have not sent the packet yet. It was not a question. No. then some part of you understands what this will do. I understand enough to look for a way that protects employees and patients. That does not mean I will protect you. Judith folded my conditions once, then again. Talk to your father before Leah sends anything. Why? Because he does not know every step Marissa and I took. I studied her face. Did he know about the suspension plan? Yes. Did he know you were going into my house? He knew evidence would be found there. The restaurant sounds seemed to recede. Glasses touched tabletops. A child laughed near the entrance. Water pressed softly against the river wall outside. What did Dad give you? I asked. Judith looked down at the photographs. The original scan of your signature. My hand stopped beside my coffee cup. He kept the old report in the governance file, she continued. I needed a clean copy. And he provided it. What did you tell him it was for? That we needed to show you had approved the controls before your review began. He knew it would be placed on a recent report. He understood what was being threatened. That is not an answer. It is the only one that matters. I stood and put the folded page back into my purse. Judith looked up at me. You came because you still want him to be innocent. I came to find out whether you believed your own excuses. And? You do. I left enough cash to cover my coffee and soup, though I had barely touched either. Leah rose from the lounge as I reached the entrance, but she waited until we were outside before speaking. The evening air carried the smell of wet pavement and the river. I wrote down everything Judith had said while the words were fresh, separating direct statements from my own conclusions. At home, 2 folders waited on the dining table. One contained the internal transition plan that might preserve jobs if my family surrendered control. The other contained the reporting packet that could end the Blake name on every clinic door. I still had not authorized Leah to send either one. Instead, I opened my contacts and stared at my father's number. Judith had given me one last reason to believe Thomas might still choose differently once I placed the truth in front of him. I called Leah and told her I wanted to meet him. Leah opposed the meeting with my father for 3 days. Your mother already told you he supplied the signature, she said. You are not going there to collect information. I need to hear what he knew. You need him to tell you Judith acted without his full consent. Her words struck closer than I wanted to admit. I closed the red folder on her desk and looked through the window at the rain sliding down the glass. If he is willing to accept an independent monitor, we can protect the employees without waiting for the clinic to collapse under investigations, I said. And if he refuses, then I stop wondering. Leah removed her glasses and placed them beside her legal pad. You are allowed to speak with your father. I am advising you not to confuse a family conversation with a safe negotiation. We arranged the meeting at a rented conference room inside her office building. Leah would remain nearby, but outside the room unless either of us requested counsel. No original evidence would be present. I brought the transition proposal, a summary of the known discrepancies, and a list of steps that could keep patients receiving care while the high-risk services were suspended. Thomas arrived alone. My father wore the charcoal suit he saved for hospital board meetings and funerals. His silver hair had been trimmed recently, and a faint shaving cut marked the side of his jaw. He looked older than he had at Christmas, though not weak. Thomas Blake had spent 30 years walking into frightened patients' rooms with the posture of a man who expected people to trust him. He placed his phone on the table. I want this recorded, he said. I am tired of every sentence becoming something different by the time it reaches your attorney. The room system can make a full recording, I replied. We both received the same copy. His gaze moved toward the ceiling microphone. Fine. I activated the system, stated the date, our names, and that we both consented. Then I slid the transition summary across the table. Thomas did not touch it. Your mother says you threatened to report the clinic unless we surrender the company to outsiders, he said. I proposed outside supervision because the people controlling the records are implicated in altering them. That is an accusation. It is supported by the provider logs. You have not shown me those logs. They will be provided through the proper process. A small muscle moved in his cheek. You speak to me as though I am a hostile witness. You suspended me before the meeting began, circulated claims that I stole medication, and gave Mom my signature to place on a document I never reviewed. Thomas leaned back. I gave her a copy of an old governance record. For what purpose? She said the clinic needed proof that you had previously approved the medication controls. Did you know she intended to place that signature on a recent report? I knew your review had become a threat to the business. The answer avoided the question without denying it. I opened the transition proposal. The procedure rooms stop operating until an independent clinical review is completed. Existing patients are transferred or treated through unaffected services. A monitor controls all medication, inventory, billing corrections, and system access. Family officers surrender administrative authority during the review. And what happens to the name on the building? Thomas asked. That depends on what the investigation finds. You already want it removed. I want patients told when their records are wrong. He pushed the paper back without reading the second page. Once we make the disclosures you are demanding, insurers will freeze payments, lenders will call their loans, referring physicians will send patients elsewhere. That is why the plan includes a transition fund and temporary payroll protection. With what money? Family assets, available insurance, and clinic reserves that are not tied to disputed claims. His eyes hardened. You have already decided to sell our home. I have decided nothing about your house. You know exactly where this leads. The rain struck the window in uneven bursts. My father folded his hands over his stomach, using the same calm pose he had used whenever a board member questioned his decisions. Last year, our clinics handled more than 11,000 patient visits, Thomas said. People drove from 3 counties because they could not find care elsewhere. We employ 186 people. Nurses, assistants, receptionists, cleaners, technicians. Some have worked for us since you were in college. Those people deserve a company that does not place false records under their names. They deserve paychecks. So, protect their paychecks through an orderly transfer. There will be no orderly transfer once reporters learn that the founder's own daughter accused the company of fraud. You keep returning to reporters. I am talking about patients. I am talking about both. Thomas rose and walked toward the window. The dark reflection in the glass showed his shoulders bent slightly forward. When I opened the first clinic, I treated patients in 2 borrowed rooms above a pharmacy, he said. Your mother handled billing at the kitchen table. We could not afford an employee for the first 7 months. Now the Blake name is on 3 buildings, a training program, and a charitable foundation. He turned to face me. You call that vanity. I call it 30 years of work. I did not call the work vanity. You want to erase the name. I want the name to stop protecting the people who misused it. Thomas returned to the table but remained standing. Your mother made choices under pressure, he said. Marissa made a medical mistake and panicked. Neither of those things should destroy an institution that helps thousands of people. A patient was labeled as seeking drugs because the clinic changed her record. One patient had a disputed record. There are false claims and medication discrepancies across multiple dates. Then correct them. Under the same management that created them? His hand came down on the back of the chair, not hard enough to make a sound. You are determined to speak as though nothing good remains. I wrote a plan to preserve everything that can operate safely. No, Natalie, you wrote a plan that places you on the moral side of the table and leaves the rest of us waiting to be judged. I looked at the papers between us. This is not about which side of the table looks cleaner. Isn't it? Thomas reached into his briefcase and removed a copy of the corrective report I had signed 8 years earlier. The old signature appeared on the final page. You approved these controls, he said. I approved a corrective action based on records Judith provided. You signed the conclusion. I should have demanded an independent review. But you did not. No. You protected the clinic? I accepted an explanation I had not tested deeply enough. That is a pleasant way to describe the same choice you now condemn. The paper remained beneath his hand. You knew an outside review might damage the business, Thomas continued. You knew employees could lose jobs. You made the decision every responsible officer eventually makes. You balanced the facts against the harm. I made a mistake. You benefited from that mistake. Your salary, your ownership interest, your house, your professional standing, all of it grew beside this company. My house was purchased with my earnings. Earnings paid by the business you now call corrupt. The word caught under my ribs. I did not call 30 years of work corrupt. You are preparing to hand it to people who will. I drew a breath and looked toward the ceiling microphone. The recording light remained green. You used my past failure to manufacture recent approvals, I said. That is not balancing harm. That is creating a false record. Your mother believed you would force a public investigation before we understood the scope. She entered my home. I did not ask her for the details. You knew evidence would be placed there. I knew she intended to create a reason to delay your audit, and you chose not to ask how. Thomas sat again. His voice dropped. One person can recover from an accusation. A community does not recover after a medical center closes. The sentence was almost gentle. You believed I could recover from being accused of stealing drugs and patient files? You have skills, resources, a lawyer. You are stronger than Marissa. Then Mom gave you the same excuse she gave me. No one wanted you imprisoned. You placed a false signature under my name and approved a suspension letter drafted before anything was found. To create time. For whom? For everyone. I watched my father's hands. They were steady. The man sitting across from me had known enough to stop the plan. Yet he had treated the details as something beneath his level of responsibility. What would have happened after I resigned? I asked. You would have received fair value for your shares. And the false records? We would have corrected them quietly. The patients? Those who required notification would have been handled individually. By Judith? By qualified counsel and compliance professionals. Chosen by Judith. Chosen by the board. You and Judith are the board majority. Thomas glanced toward the door. This discussion is no longer useful. It could still be useful. Read the proposal. I know what it requires. You have not opened it. It requires me to confess publicly, surrender the company, destroy Marissa's career, and place every employee at the mercy of agencies that do not care whether the clinic survives. It requires you to stop deciding whose life can be damaged to preserve yours. His eyes locked onto mine. You think you are better than us because you are willing to burn everything down. I am trying to prevent more people from being harmed by taking away their doctors and jobs, by moving patients safely and protecting payroll during the transfer. You cannot guarantee that. No, I cannot. Then say what you are really choosing. My jaw had begun to ache. For an hour, every condition I offered had been turned into betrayal, and every patient harmed had been reduced to a cost that could be absorbed. If this is what the clinic has to become to survive, I said, then maybe it should not survive. Thomas did not move. The sentence remained in the room between us, harsher than the proposal, easier to repeat, and stripped of every condition I had spent the meeting explaining. I knew it as soon as I heard it. My father closed his briefcase. There you are, he said. What does that mean? It means your concern was never only about records. He stood and buttoned his jacket. The full recording will show exactly what I meant. People rarely wait for the full recording. Thomas looked toward the green light on the ceiling. For the first time that afternoon, the calm on his face resembled satisfaction. 3 days later, every clinic employee received an email from him. The subject line read, "A message about the future of Blake Family Pain and Wellness." Thomas wrote that he had attempted to resolve the family dispute privately, but I had rejected every reasonable option. He claimed I intended to use regulators and lawsuits to close the clinics unless the family surrendered control to me. An audio file was attached. It lasted 7 seconds. My voice said, if this is what the clinic has to become to survive, then maybe it should not survive. Nothing about the transition fund, nothing about transferring patients, nothing about outside supervision or correcting false records. Just my voice, clean and unmistakable. Leah obtained the full conference room recording within an hour. We preserved it, compared the file information, and drafted a notice stating that the clip had been cut from a longer conversation. The damage had already moved faster than our correction. Kelly had agreed to speak with Leah about pressure to sign late procedure notes. She canceled the meeting that afternoon. A billing coordinator who had asked whether her login was used after hours stopped returning calls. Someone posted Thomas's clip in an employee group. Replies appeared beneath it. She wants all of us unemployed. She has never cared who gets hurt as long as she is right. Easy to destroy a company when you own part of it. I read each message once, then closed the page. Calling every employee to explain myself would have made the situation worse. Sending a defensive mass email could be described as witness pressure. Leah advised a narrow response through counsel and direct preservation requests for anyone with relevant information. You gave him the sentence he needed, she said in her office that evening. I know. I am not saying that to punish you. I know that too. Leah placed the full transcript beside the edited clip. You did not meet him to learn what he knew, she said. You already knew enough. I looked down at my hands. I wanted him to choose the transfer plan. You wanted him to choose you. The words left no room for an objection. For most of my life, Thomas had praised me for being dependable. He called when contracts needed reading, when employees needed calming, and when Marissa created a problem no one wanted attached to her name. I had mistaken usefulness for trust. My father had chosen me many times, but only as the person expected to carry the weight. That night, I opened the external reporting packet on my dining table. Leah had marked every page requiring my authorization. The red folder containing my old report sat beside it. My phone vibrated. Thomas had sent one message. There is still time to stop this. Before I could respond, another text appeared. It came from Kelly. I'm sorry. I have 2 little girls, and I need this job. I cannot help you close the clinic. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. My father had taken the part of me that worried about innocent people and turned it into the reason those same people no longer trusted me. For the next 5 weeks, my father's edited recording did exactly what he intended. Employees who had once brought me late charts and whispered concerns in my doorway now avoided my calls. The clinic released weekly statements promising uninterrupted care, stable jobs, and a fair internal review. My name appeared only when they needed someone to blame for the tension. Leah continued preserving records and preparing the external packet, but I had not authorized her to send it. The internal transition plan still sat on my dining table. Every morning, I told myself I was giving my family one final chance to surrender control without destroying payroll or interrupting treatment. Every evening, the same truth waited beside the folder. Thomas had not opened the proposal. Judith had rejected it. Marissa had never answered any condition that required her to step away from patients. Still, I kept the packet unsent. At the end of May, Monica asked to see me again. She arrived at Leah's office, carrying the same canvas tote, but this time she also brought her daughter, Rachel. Rachel remained in the reception area while Monica met with us. Their conversation before the door closed was quiet and strained. The careful politeness of 2 people still repairing something that should never have been damaged. Monica sat across from me and placed the hospital letter on the table. I heard the clinics may close, she said. That is possible. Employees are saying you want them closed. My proposal keeps the safe services operating under independent control. Does your family have to agree? Yes. And have they? No. Monica smoothed one corner of the letter. Then it is not a plan. It is a request. The words were not cruel. That made them harder to dismiss. I am trying to prevent innocent employees from losing their jobs, I said. How many employees? 186. She nodded, as though committing the number to memory. Then Monica pushed the hospital letter toward me. The line describing her as seeking controlled medication had been highlighted in yellow. And how many patients have already paid to keep those jobs? The room went still around us. Monica did not raise her voice or continue speaking. She let the paper answer for her. I looked at the highlighted sentence, then at the funeral program, proving she had been in Georgia while our clinic billed for treating her. Her daughter had searched her medicine cabinet. Doctors had questioned her pain. An insurer had paid a false claim under a record carrying my family's name. I had been counting what might happen if the truth came out. Monica had been living with what happened because it had not. I do not know how many, I said. That is the problem. Yes, she sat back. I am not asking you to punish your family for me. I am asking whether anyone is going to correct my record before the next doctor decides I am lying. The internal plan requires full patient notification and corrections. If they cooperate. Yes. And if they do not? I looked at the packet on Leah's side of the table. Then the decision has to leave their hands. Monica picked up the letter and returned it to her envelope. That is all I came to ask. Before leaving, she paused beside my chair. Your employees did not create those records, she said, but neither did the patients. After she left, Leah closed the conference room door. You do not need to decide this minute, she said. I have been saying that for weeks. You are waiting for a version of the choice that did not hurt anyone. There is no such version. No. I stared at the empty chair where Monica had been sitting. Schedule Diane. Diane arrived the following morning with her original notebook sealed inside a clear document sleeve. Her attorney had reviewed the copying process, and she was prepared to provide a statement about the inventory changes, her warnings, and her termination. Before signing anything, she looked at the red folder beside my hand. "Is that the old report?" she asked. "Yes. Are you giving it to them?" "I have not decided how it will be submitted." Diane pushed the unsigned statement away. "Then I am not signing mine." Leah folded her hands. "Tell us what concerns you." "I spent 3 years being described as dishonest because this family controlled the official story," Diane said. "I will not help build another story where Natalie was perfect and everyone else was corrupt." "I never claimed I was perfect," I said. "You signed the report that ended my complaint." "I know. You used records supplied by the person I accused." "I know that too." Diane's gaze did not leave mine. "If investigators learn about it from your family instead of from you, they will wonder what else you left out. It may cost me my profession." "It cost me mine." The sentence landed without decoration. Diane continued. "I will tell the truth about what Judith ordered me to do. I will also tell them that I warned you and you did not look far enough. Both things happened. You should tell them both, then give them both." I opened the red folder. The old report rested inside, its pages softened at the folds, the removed staple leaving 2 rust-colored marks near the top. My genuine signature appeared on the final page, beneath a conclusion that had protected the clinic and ended Diane's request for an outside review. 8 years earlier, I had believed I was preventing panic over a documentation error. 3 years earlier, I had repeated the same mistake with Diane. I had trusted summaries because they kept the problem small enough to control. My family had counted on that habit when they chose me. "I will include it," I said. Diane watched my face for several seconds, then pulled the statement back toward her. "Now I will sign." That night, I returned to my house alone. The police had released the bedroom weeks earlier. The closet had been cleaned after the evidence team finished, but I had not restored it to the way it was. The winter boots sat on the floor beside the empty shelf. Every time I considered putting them back, I saw the black bag handle hanging between the boxes. Rain tapped against the windows. The air inside smelled faintly of dust and the lemon cleaner used on the evidence area. On the dining table, I placed the 2 choices side by side. The internal plan filled 1 folder. It offered a supervised transfer, temporary payroll protection, safe patient relocation, and an opportunity for my family to disclose the damage voluntarily. The external packet filled 3 binders and an encrypted drive. It contained the recovered laptop material, the door code history, the camera recording, the evidence list from my closet, medication lot information, provider logs, Monica's disputed records, Diane's notes, the edited audio clip, the full recording, the rush suspension documents, and the meeting minutes created before the meeting occurred. The red folder remained separate. I made coffee, forgot to drink it, and read the old report again. The paper carried the smell of the file box where it had rested for years. My signature pressed through hard enough to leave a faint impression on the next page. I remembered Judith sliding the document toward me in the conference room, Thomas checking his watch, and an administrator waiting outside to send the final report to the insurer. 60 employees had depended on the clinic then. That number had been repeated until signing felt like the responsible choice. I had not known the conclusion was false, but I had known the review was incomplete. Instead of stopping, I had accepted the answer that created the least immediate damage. 8 years later, I was sitting in the same kind of silence, searching for another answer that would keep the building standing. Monica's letter lay in the external packet. Diane's unsigned termination notice lay beneath it. The employees I wanted to protect had names and families. So did the patients. Near midnight, I called Leah. She answered with the rough voice of someone awakened from sleep. "Natalie?" "Include the report I signed," I said. "All of it." A pause followed, then the sound of a lamp switching on. "I need to advise you again that this may expose you to professional discipline," Leah said. "It may affect your ownership claims, your credibility as a compliance officer, and any future position that requires a background review." "I understand. You may be questioned about why you did not escalate the issue 8 years ago and why you accepted Judith's documentation." "They should ask." Your family will say the report proves you approved the controls. Then the investigators can compare what I approved with what happened afterward. Leah's voice softened. Once the packet is delivered, we may not be able to control which agencies act first or what becomes public. I am not asking to control it anymore. Are you certain? I looked toward the dark hallway leading to the bedroom my mother had entered. They can judge what I did, I said, but they will not use my silence to bury what they did. Leah inhaled slowly. I will finalize the disclosures in the morning. No selective summary. No selective summary, she agreed. Include Diane's warning to me. Yes. Include the full audio of what I said to Dad. Yes. And include the offer they made to buy my shares. It is already listed. I closed my eyes, not from doubt, but from exhaustion. Send it. The next day, Leah delivered the material through the proper legal channels to the entities with authority over separate parts of the case. No single office received unrestricted access to everything. Patient information went through protected processes. Medication and billing concerns went to the parties responsible for reviewing them. The suspected framing evidence remained with law enforcement and the attorneys handling preservation. There was no dramatic announcement. A courier collected sealed materials. Encrypted files were transferred through secure portals. Leah received confirmation numbers and preservation notices. By late afternoon, the decision I had delayed for weeks existed outside my family's reach. Judith called twice. Thomas sent a message asking whether I had done something irreversible. Marissa emailed that any disclosure of clinic records would prove I had always intended to damage her. I answered none of them. The packet had to stand without my anger. In early June, Omar received access to additional provider records under the new Preservation Authority. Leah, an outside examiner, and I met in her office while he compared the clinic's visible files with the software company's original logs. My account had been disabled at 8:23 on the Saturday morning after the laptop discovery. The provider confirmed that no successful login occurred under my credentials after that moment. Yet several documents appeared inside the clinic system, with dates suggesting I had reviewed them before my suspension. Omar opened the first log entry. This PDF was uploaded on March 24th, he said. Judith Blake's administrator account, device assigned to her office. The visible form displayed an effective date from February and carried the scanned image of my signature. He opened another. Uploaded March 26th, same administrator account, same workstation. Effective date entered as January. A third file followed, then a fourth. Each one had been inserted after I lost access, but the dates printed inside the forms made them appear older. To an employee using the ordinary clinic screen, the records looked as though they had existed before my suspension. The provider's log preserved the truth underneath. Judith's account. Judith's computer. The actual upload times. She did not use Natalie's disabled account, Omar explained. She used her own administrator privileges to add documents carrying Natalie's signature image and entered earlier effective dates in the form fields. Leah looked toward me. That distinction matters. It did more than protect the logic of the system. It proved someone continued constructing a history under my name, after removing my ability to enter the system at all. The old report did not make that evidence weaker. It showed exactly where the signature image came from. Omar moved to the forensic index from Marissa's laptop. There is one more item the examiner flagged after the expanded authorization. What kind of item? Leah asked. A deleted folder. It was not opened during the first review because it fell outside the immediate home entry material. The folder name appeared on the screen, after Natalie. Omar looked at us before continuing. The recovered index shows documents assigned to your father, your mother, and Dr. Blake. My family had not prepared only one person to sacrifice. They had prepared for what came after me. The folder called After Natalie did not bring police to my parents' door the next morning. Nothing happened that quickly. By June, the laptop had been imaged, the original secured, and copies of specific files released only through the proper process. Separate reviews opened around the same facts. Law enforcement examined the entry into my house and the planted evidence. Insurers reviewed claims. The state medical board looked at Marissa's conduct. Other authorities focused on controlled medication records and altered documents. Each office asked different questions, and each one wanted the answers in its own format. For most of that summer, my life became dates, interviews, sworn statements, and long stretches of silence between them. I gave the same timeline until I could recite it without looking at my notes. Marissa called at 5:32 on Friday evening. She insisted on Northgate, 40 minutes from my house. I arrived at 6:34. Judith's code opened my front door at 6:43. My mother later claimed she was still outside. The bag was found behind the winter boots. The suspension email had been drafted before the bag was discovered. Investigators asked about the 8-year-old report. I told them I had signed it. They asked whether I knew the conclusion was false. I said no. They asked whether I knew the review was incomplete. I said yes. No answer made that page disappear. It became part of the record beside everything my family had done afterward. Leah submitted the board bylaws, the meeting notice sent less than an hour before the vote, her written objection, and the minutes created before the meeting supposedly took place. Majority ownership gave my parents voting power, but it did not make fabricated procedure legitimate. The rushed suspension mattered because it showed preparation. My family had not reacted to evidence found in my house. They had prepared their response before the evidence was there. By August, the investigators had enough preserved material to compare Judith's changing explanations with information that did not change. First, she said she brought soup and found the door locked. Then she said the door had been open when she arrived. Later, through her attorney, she claimed she entered because she feared someone had broken in. The smart lock recorded her personal code. The hallway camera showed a hand turning the device toward the wall minutes after that code was used. A neighborhood camera captured her SUV entering my street and leaving 27 minutes later. The soup was never found. Neither was a container, grocery bag, or receipt showing she had purchased it. The medication lot numbers inside the gym bag traced back to inventory under Judith's administrative control. Several vials appeared on clinic records as used or destroyed, although the original supplier records showed they came from the same shipment. No one fact proved the whole plan. Together, they left less room for her stories. The clearest answer to the laptop question came from a deleted message recovered between Marissa and Judith. At 6:36 that Friday evening, 2 minutes after I entered Northgate, Marissa wrote, "She made it. You have at least an hour." Judith replied, "I am already here." The technician had not been an accident in their schedule. Marissa had sent me across town on purpose. She believed the deleted files were gone, and she believed keeping me in a repair shop would give our mother time to enter my house, move the camera, place the bag, and leave before I returned. Her plan failed for the same reason she had dismissed my work for years. She understood what appeared on a screen. She did not understand what remained underneath it. The message also explained why Marissa kept asking whether I had arrived. Her concern had never been the damaged presentation. She had been tracking the amount of time Judith had inside my home. In September, the outside software provider completed a comparison between the weekly archive and the clinic's active records. The changes did not appear all at once. They had been added in layers. An early copy of Monica's chart described her pain after the procedure and noted that she denied taking additional medication. A later version added language, suggesting inconsistent reporting. Another version referred to prior medication administrations that did not appear in the original record. The billing history changed too. Claims were added, descriptions revised, and supporting forms uploaded after the dates printed inside them. Judith's administrator account appeared again and again. Her office computer uploaded reconciliation reports after my suspension. The forms displayed earlier effective dates and carried the image of my handwritten signature. The provider log preserved the actual upload time, the account used, and the device that sent each file. The signature image matched the 8-year-old report down to the broken line in the first letter and the faint dot near the bottom. People do not reproduce the same pen skip in the same place across years of handwritten signatures. It was one scanned image, copied repeatedly. My family had argued that I manufactured concerns after becoming angry with Marissa. The archived records showed that the documents supporting their defense had been added after they locked me out. They had built evidence beneath my name while I had no working credentials. Then the examiner opened the folder labeled, "After Natalie." At first, the contents looked like drafts from a public relations firm. Statements, talking points, and incomplete letters sat inside folders bearing family initials. The deeper the examiner went, the clearer Judith's backup plan became. One draft described Thomas as an aging founder who had failed to supervise his wife and younger daughter. It suggested he no longer understood the daily business and had approved documents without reading them. Another described Marissa as exhausted, emotionally unstable, and acting alone after a difficult patient outcome. That version presented Judith as a mother who discovered the misconduct too late. A third set of files involved asset transfers. Property interests, consulting payments, and proposed accounts had been organized, so Judith could claim certain funds were separate from clinic operations. She had prepared to protect herself after using me. She had also prepared to sacrifice Marissa and Thomas if sacrificing me did not work. The folder did not turn my family against one another. It showed that they had never truly stood together. Marissa's attorney requested copies of messages Judith had sent about changing records. Thomas's attorney produced board emails showing that Judith controlled daily operations. Judith's legal team claimed Marissa had begun altering charts before anyone else knew. Each person tried to reduce a personal role. Each person supplied another piece of the larger picture. Thomas turned over an email in which he warned Judith that Marissa's late chart entries could threaten the clinic. He meant the message to show that he had objected. Instead, it proved he knew about the problem months before my suspension. Marissa provided instructions Judith sent about which inventory totals needed to match billing reports. She hoped to show that our mother directed her. The messages also showed that Marissa understood the figures were false. Judith produced financial records intended to place responsibility on Thomas as chairman. Those records connected disputed payments to accounts the family had previously denied existed. I did not enjoy watching them accuse one another. For months, they had insisted that loyalty required silence. Once silence stopped protecting them, loyalty disappeared. Diane gave her statement in October. She brought the original notebook and answered questions about the missing inventory, the altered destruction forms, and the warning I failed to pursue. She did not improve my role to make me useful to her case. Natalie reviewed what Judith gave her, Diane said during one recorded interview. She should have gone outside that chain. She didn't. But she also did not order me to change the numbers. Judith did. That distinction mattered because it was true. Monica gave permission for investigators to review the relevant portions of her records. Her funeral program and travel receipts proved she was in Georgia, on the day our clinic billed for treating her. The hospital letter showed what followed when altered records portrayed her as seeking medication. Other patients were contacted through protected procedures. Not everyone remembered precise dates, but several disputed services or language added to their charts. One man had been billed for medication on a day he was admitted to another hospital. A woman found a procedure note describing consent she said she never signed. Their cases did not depend on mine. Mine helped expose where authorities needed to look. By December, Marissa was placed under an emergency restriction that prevented her from performing the high-risk procedures at issue while the licensing process continued. It was not a final revocation, and the board had not yet decided every allegation. Still, for the first time, she could not enter a treatment room and rely on the Blake name to stop questions at the door. Thomas was removed from daily control under an interim agreement. He continued calling himself founder, but he no longer approved payroll changes, record corrections, or legal responses without outside review. Judith lost access to the clinic's banking, billing, and administrative systems. Her attorney described the restrictions as unnecessary punishment before trial. The monitor described them as preservation. The clinics continued operating in a reduced form through the winter. Procedures connected to the disputed records stopped. Some patients were transferred. Insurers delayed payments while claims were reviewed, and vendors demanded assurances before extending further credit. Employees were not all dismissed at once. That had been my family's favorite threat, but it was not the only possible outcome. The process was ugly, expensive, and slower than anyone wanted. Some employees left. Others stayed under temporary management. Patients received notices explaining that certain records were being reviewed and that treatment could be transferred without additional administrative fees. Kelly contacted Leah in January. She did not apologize for refusing to help earlier. She simply said she was ready to tell the truth. Kelly described being asked to sign a procedure note after the date of treatment. When she refused, Marissa told her the correction had already been approved by compliance. Kelly believed that meant me. The supposed approval carried my copied signature. I thought Natalie had signed off, Kelly said. That is why I stopped arguing. Her statement showed another purpose of the forged documents. They were not created only to fool regulators later. My name had been used inside the clinic to make employees obey in the moment. By February, the temporary monitor reported that the organization could not continue safely under family control. Money connected to disputed claims had to be separated. Patient corrections required independent authority. The ownership dispute prevented ordinary decisions, and every major officer had a conflict. Leah explained what came next before the hearing. They may appoint a receiver, she said. That person would control defined assets and operations under the court's authority. Will the clinics close? Some services may. The remaining operations could continue long enough to transfer patients, protect records, pay employees, and determine what can survive. Will my parents still own their shares? Ownership and control are different questions. They may retain claims to whatever remains, but they will not direct the receiver. In March, nearly 1 year after I carried Marissa's laptop into Northgate, a receiver was appointed. Her name was Rebecca Shaw. She had managed 2 hospital restructurings and spoke in short sentences that left little room for family history. At the first transition meeting, Rebecca placed an organizational chart on the table. Thomas, Judith, and Marissa had been removed from every operational position. My name remained in a small box beside temporary compliance support. I am not taking ownership, I said. No one has asked you to, Rebecca replied. My father will. That is not my concern. She asked whether I would help identify records requiring correction and explain the archive system to an independent compliance team. The role would be limited, documented, and temporary. I would have no authority over criminal evidence, licensing decisions, or family assets. I agreed to that scope. I did not agree to become chief executive, chairwoman, or the next Blake at the head of the table. Over the next several days, Rebecca arranged patient transfers, froze non-essential spending, and established a fund for payroll and urgent vendor obligations. Employees received instructions from people whose last name was not Blake. At the main clinic, workers covered the brass sign near the entrance with a plain gray panel. The letters remained underneath, but no patient could see them. During our final meeting that month, Rebecca reviewed the options for the remaining services. One location may continue under a new nonprofit or independent operating entity, she said. The patient base is stable enough, and several employees are not implicated in the conduct under review. Thomas's attorney asked what conditions would be required. Rebecca looked down at the report. The Blake family will retain no operational control, she said. No family officer will hold a management position, and the new organization will not use the Blake name. My father shifted beside his attorney. That name has served this community for 30 years, Thomas said. Rebecca closed the report. Then it has had its term. She turned toward me. The viable services can continue, Miss Blake, but only after the name comes off the building. The Blake letters came off the main clinic on Friday, April 17th, 2026. No crowd gathered to watch. There were no reporters, speeches, or employees applauding from the parking lot. 2 workers arrived with a lift shortly after 7 in the morning. Metal scraped against brick. Power tools buzzed above the entrance. And 1 letter at a time disappeared into the back of their truck. I watched from Rebecca Shaw's office across the street. Thomas had spent 30 years placing our name on buildings, donation plaques, scholarship programs, and hospital brochures. By noon, the only place it remained was on the court filings that explained why it had been removed. The surviving clinic reopened under independent management with a new name. It offered fewer services, but the doors stayed open. Patients whose treatment could not continue there were transferred through written care plans, and employees who remained received paychecks from accounts my family could no longer touch. My father had warned that removing him would destroy everything. What it destroyed was his ability to decide which truths the business could afford. Marissa's medical license remained restricted while the licensing case proceeded. Her attorneys argued that she had made documentation errors under pressure from Judith, but the records showed more than careless charting. She had altered Monica's notes after a serious complication, participated in claims for treatment that never occurred, and created the deleted packet used to keep me away from home while our mother planted evidence. The message she sent Judith from Northgate's time window mattered. She made it. You have at least an hour. So did the voice memo about the winter boots, her account history inside Monica's chart, and the false prescription bearing my name. No single item carried the case. Together, they left Marissa with no believable way to describe herself as an innocent doctor obeying an overbearing mother. She eventually entered a plea covering record fraud, conspiracy connected to the evidence placed in my home, and related conduct. The final terms included restitution, supervision after release, and restrictions tied to the use of protected medical information. The medical board completed its own process and revoked her license. That decision wounded her more deeply than the criminal case. Marissa had introduced herself as Dr. Blake since the day she graduated from medical school. The title opened doors before she reached them. It made donors listen, patients trust her, and our parents arrange every family photograph around her white coat. By June, the foundation removed her biography from its website. 2 awards were withdrawn. Organizations that once used her face in fundraising materials issued short statements saying she no longer represented them. Her last message to me arrived through Leah because direct contact had been restricted. Natalie always wanted my life. She found a way to take it. I read the sentence once. Marissa still believed my refusal to carry her guilt meant I had stolen something from her. She never wrote Monica's name. She never mentioned the medication placed in my closet or the employees who had been told my forged signature approved their work. I did not answer. Judith's case carried the heaviest consequences because the evidence placed her at the center of the planning. Her code opened my door, her sleeve covered the hallway camera. Medication under her control appeared in the bag. Her administrator account uploaded false records after my access had been disabled, and her files showed an attempt to shift assets before the claims reached them. The After Natalie folder damaged her final defense more than she expected. Judith had spent months saying every choice had been made to hold the family together. Yet she had prepared statements, blaming Thomas for failing to supervise the company and describing Marissa as an unstable physician acting alone. She had protected only one person in every version: herself. My mother accepted an agreement that included a term of incarceration, restitution obligations, and the loss of any administrative role in a medical business. The court considered her age and lack of prior convictions. It also considered the planning, the use of patient information, the entry into my home, and the attempt to frame another person for conduct she helped conceal. The sentence did not restore every patient record or return the years Diane had spent defending her name. No sentence could do that. It did remove Judith's control. The family house was sold because it secured business obligations and because the remaining assets had to answer for restitution, administrative costs, and civil claims. Leah asked whether I wanted to submit an offer before the sale became final. I said no. That house contained birthday dinners, Christmas mornings, and the kitchen table where my mother once helped me with algebra. It also contained the office where she organized files used to falsify records. Buying it would not preserve the first set of memories or erase the second. I requested 1 box of photographs that belonged to me. The receiver approved it after confirming the contents held no business documents. Everything else went with the house. Thomas received less severe criminal treatment than Judith because he had not entered my home or uploaded most of the altered files. That did not make him an innocent bystander. He had provided the scan of my signature. He knew a false accusation was being constructed to delay my audit. He approved the suspension before the supposed evidence was discovered, then edited our recorded conversation to make employees believe I wanted them unemployed. The medical board imposed a permanent restriction that ended any return to active practice. He resigned from his hospital positions before they could remove him, though the hospital's final statement still noted that his departure followed findings tied to supervision and record integrity. The court imposed financial penalties and strict probationary conditions under the agreement resolving his role. Thomas remained free. He also remained alive to see the Blake name removed from the institution he had sacrificed me to preserve. Before Judith reported to custody, and before the ownership settlement became final, Rebecca required one last transfer meeting. My parents attended with separate attorneys. Marissa appeared by video from her lawyer's office. A stack of documents waited near my father's hand. Thomas pushed them toward me as soon as Rebecca finished reviewing the receiver's plan. The remaining operation needs continuity, he said. You know the systems better than anyone. Take our ownership interests and rebuild it properly. I did not touch the papers. You spent a year telling people I wanted the clinic destroyed, I said. I was trying to protect it. And now you want me responsible for whatever survives. You exposed the failures? Thomas replied. You have a duty to repair them. The old assignment had returned in a new form. Marissa created the damage. Judith hid it. Thomas permitted it. Then, I was expected to become useful enough to spare everyone from the final consequences. I agreed to help the independent team correct records and transfer compliance functions, I said. That work has a closing date. My father tapped the documents. This is your inheritance. No, it is your unfinished responsibility. Thomas's shoulders stiffened. You won. I did not do all of this to sit in your chair. Judith adjusted the cuff of her coat. Even then, with her house sold and a report date approaching, she found a way to speak as though the real problem was my lack of gratitude. At least keep the Blake name, she said. Whatever you think of us, it is your name, too. I looked at the temporary logo on Rebecca's transition binder. It belonged to no family. That was exactly why it could serve the people who entered the building. It is my name, I said. It is no longer their shield. Rebecca pulled the ownership papers back toward her. The receiver sold or transferred the viable services under court supervision. My family's remaining interests became claims against whatever assets were left after patient correction, payroll, vendors, insurers, administration expenses, and restitution obligations were addressed. There was no hidden fortune waiting for me. I did not want one. Monica received a formal correction stating that the disputed procedure had not occurred and that the language suggesting she sought medication was unsupported. The corrected information was sent through the proper channels to the health systems that had received the false record. When she showed me the letter, her finger rested over one paragraph. This will not make my daughter forget searching my cabinets, Monica said. No, I replied, it will not. But the next doctor will not begin with a lie. That matters. Yes, Monica said. It does. Diane's personnel record was corrected. The company withdrew the statement, implying she had altered inventory dishonestly and acknowledged that her concerns had not received an independent investigation. She received compensation through the civil resolution, although it did not equal the income or stability she had lost. I signed a separate letter accepting responsibility for dismissing her warning too quickly. Diane read it in Leah's office. You did not blame your mother in every paragraph, she said. My mother's conduct is in the official findings. The letter is about mine. Diane folded the page and placed it in her bag. That is the first useful thing the Blake Compliance Department has given me. We did not become close friends. Forgiveness was not part of any settlement. She had helped expose the truth, and I had finally stopped asking her pain to make me feel better. My own professional review ended earlier this month. The panel found no evidence that I participated in the recent falsification, billing conduct, or plan against me. It did find that the corrective report I signed 8 years earlier had not been supported by a sufficiently independent review. I received a formal warning and additional oversight requirements for a defined period. The decision did not clear me of every mistake. That was why I could accept it. Today is Friday, July 24th, 2026. 16 months have passed since I carried Marissa's laptop into Northgate. I now work independently with healthcare organizations that need compliance reviews performed by someone who does not answer to the family whose name appears on the door. My contracts define my authority in writing. When a client refuses access to source records, I leave rather than sign around the missing information. I still live in the same house. After the police released it, I changed every code, replaced the lock, and removed all family access from the security system. For several months, I slept in the guest room because the bedroom smelled like evidence powder and my mother's perfume, even after the walls had been cleaned. Eventually, I carried my things upstairs. The winter boots went back onto the shelf, but I did not push them behind the boxes. I placed them at the front where I could see them whenever I opened the closet. Strength does not mean another person gets to calculate how much of your life you can survive losing. Family loyalty does not turn a lie into protection, and sharing a name does not require sharing the consequences of choices you did not make. Blake is still my name. It belongs to me now. When loyalty asks you to ignore harm, loyalty has crossed into complicity. You should protect evidence, seek help, and refuse deals that depend on silence. Being strong does not mean allowing relatives to decide how much of your life you can lose. You can admit your own mistakes without accepting blame for crimes you did not commit. Tell the whole truth, even when part of it is uncomfortable, because honesty gives others a chance to judge. Family ties deserve care, but they do not excuse fraud, abuse, or betrayal. Your name belongs to you, not to anyone who misuses it.